It's the dawn of a new year in the shadow of the Golden Dome, but the story of the 2020 season, a season like no other, is far from finished.
Today, for the first time in 96 years, Notre Dame returns to the Rose Bowl. But instead of a sun-splashed late afternoon in Pasadena, this year the granddaddy of them all heads to a place your granddaddy never would have expected, Dallas.
That latest twist in this strange season sends the Irish to a city where they've captured past magic, and they will need more of it today.
Notre Dame is a massive underdog, and you don't have to look too hard to know why. The blowout loss 13 days ago in the ACC Championship sparked memories of the beatdown the Irish got the last time they stepped on this college football playoff stage.
Oh, and no one forgets what happened when Notre Dame and today's foe Alabama last met. Well, this year's Tide is brimming with talent too, including a triumvirate in the Heisman top 5.
So today, the words from the victory march, what though the odds have never rung more true. The college football world expects another late season Irish disappointment.
But can Notre Dame shock the sport, wake up the echoes, and take a huge step towards that long-awaited 12th banner? The countdown to that answer starts now.
Live from the WNDU studios, this is a special college football playoff edition of 16 News Now's Countdown to Kickoff.
Good afternoon, Happy New Year, and welcome to 16 News Now's Countdown to Kickoff. I'm Mark Skol Jr.
And I'm WHME Sports Director Chuck Freeby. We start with that tough task in front of the Irish today against the #1 team in the country, Alabama. You name it, the Tide have it. One of the greatest coaches in any sport in any era, Nick Saban. 3 of the top 5 Heisman Trophy vote getters, including finalist quarterback Mac Jones and wide receiver Devonta Smith. Either could take home the trophy next Tuesday. An offense that scores in the blink of an eye and a defense filled with guys who you'll soon see on Sunday.
So why even play them? Well, the Irish sure respect the Tide, but they aren't ready to be pushed over.
I know we're the underdog, obviously. They're the #1 seed, we're the #4 seed, but it's just up to us to go out there and compete. Compete as a play and go out there and get the win.
We believe we can win. We believe that we can win a national championship this year. And that's where it matters, and that's where it starts. And it's just an unbelievable opportunity for this team. And these guys believe. It's been a fun week, a couple weeks of preparation. We're just excited to get out to Dallas and go play on the biggest stage. That's why you come to Notre Dame. So we're here, ready to do it.
Today's tough task in front of the Irish comes less than 2 weeks after they got blasted by Clemson in the ACC title game. That has a familiar narrative back with a vengeance, the belief that Notre Dame can't win the big one.
It is a storyline that sure irks Brian Kelly. Problem is, the people who spout it have a whole lot proof. Just look at the last Irish matchups with the 3 other teams in this year's college football playoff. There's the pasting the Irish got at the hands of Alabama, a 42-14 blowout in the 2013 BCS National Championship game. The last time the Irish faced Ohio State, Buckeyes came out on top, 44-28 in the 2016 Fiesta Bowl, and then there's last month's 34-10 loss to Clemson in the ACC title game. Still, Brian Kelly says he's sick of hearing about it.
We're knocking at the door every year, playing really good teams and great opponents, and there's elite football teams. I don't know why this narrative continues to pop up when we're always in the games. No, we haven't won a national champion. That's correct. I'm not changing the record. But we are there every single year, and we are grinding it out just like everybody else. Only one team gets to celebrate at the end of the year. We're going to keep banging it, and we're going to keep getting back here. That's our job, and that's our challenge each and every year, is to compete for a national championship, and we'll continue to do that.
Now, the Irish are a roughly 20-point underdog today against Alabama, so should they be? We now know Brian Kelly's stance. What about yours? That is the topic of today's Lock Monday Auto Group Irish fan poll on WNDU.com.
We want to know from you what will be the Rose Bowl result. Right now, 25% of you are all in on the Irish to win. 54% are taking Alabama and the points. You think the Tide will win by 20 or more, while 21% say Bama wins by less than 20. There is still time to vote in the Lock Money Auto Group Irish fan poll on WNDU.com. We'll have the final results around 1:50. Now, there is a ton of talk about how powerful Alabama's offense is, but their defense is just as impressive.
The Countdown's Megan Smedley joins us now from Studio B with what the Fighting Irish need to do to get themselves on the board. Megan?
Guys, 2 weeks ago, Notre Dame was virtually shut down offensively and they couldn't get anything going. The Irish will obviously need to get things rolling if they want a chance to compete with the Crimson Tide. In the ACC championship game, Notre Dame was held to just 44 rushing yards, by far the lowest this season. It was the first time Notre Dame didn't eclipse 100 rushing yards in the game. Today, they'll need Kyron Williams to return to his explosiveness. They'll need Ian Book to be scrambling, and they'll need Chris Tyree to turn on the Jets. Now, a lot of that comes at the hands of the offensive line, and all season long, the backs have built a strong relationship with that line, and today could be the perfect place to showcase that.
I've always trusted my linemen. I know that they're going to give me their everything and on every down, and I'm going to do the same for them. So it's that mutual bond between us that you're going to have to kill us to stop us. So to feel like that with the offensive line is huge, and I know that they feel the same way. And come Friday, that we're just going to leave it all out there on the field.
Now, Williams also says getting the run going was their top priority this week. They will definitely need to do that in order to give the Irish a fighting chance.
Well, Megan, one reason why the Notre Dame offense needs to get things rolling again is due to the fact the Alabama offense puts a ridiculous amount of points on the board. Last year, the national champion LSU Tigers averaged 48.4 points per game with their historic offense.
Well, this year's Tide has been even better. Their offensive numbers, they have scoring an absurd 49.7 points per game. Meanwhile, the Notre Dame defense has been quite steady all season long. Opponents averaged just 18.6 points against the Irish. That is the 14th lowest mark in the nation.
However, no defense has been able to figure out this explosive Tide offense yet. Alabama's lowest point total in a single game in 2020 is 38 points, but the Irish D thinks the plan they have in place will work.
I think you always have to be cognizant of how many people that can hurt you on the field, especially playing against Alabama this week. But I think it all goes back to our coaches talking about doing your job, and me personally not trying to get out of myself and outside my body and make plays that aren't mine.
The key is just to stop them on first and second down and get them behind the sticks to make it even more difficult for them to dive into their playbook and just run whatever they want to run. So I think the issue here, or the challenge here, is to just control the narrative.
It's not the first rodeo for either of these coaches. Between them, Brian Kelly and Nick Saban combined for over 500 wins entering today's game.
And only North Carolina's Mack Brown has coached more games than these two among the active coaches. Of course, Saban gets most of the attention here. You can certainly understand why. He is 4-0 against Notre Dame in his career, including the win over Kelly in the 2013 national championship game. That is the only time the two coaches have squared off.
This week, Kelly and Saban talked about how each one has evolved as a coach over the years.
So you're seeing fundamentally sound defense. You're still seeing the same principles. You're seeing at times elite play in certain position groups at Alabama. And then, an offense now that, can rival the very best college offenses in the country.
I've always had a tremendous amount of respect for, Brian Kelly. Wherever he's been a coach, he's had a tremendous amount of success. But I think their team reflects the kind of team that anybody would want to coach in terms of how they compete, how hard they play, sort of the discipline and all the intangible things that you try to develop and build, in your team and in your program.
Of course, the main difference comes in national championships. Saban has 6, Kelly has none. Up next, we switch from the head coaches to the Irish coordinator.
You'll hear from recently minted Vandy head coach Clark Lee on how he's keeping all of his focus on the Irish D.
Then we flip to the other side of the ball to hear from Tommy Rees. He tells us about his relationship with his Irish offense and what they need to do to knock off Alabama today.
And here is your first countdown trivia question of the afternoon. When was the last time Notre Dame won one of the current New Year's Six bowl games, and who did the Irish beat? The answer when the Rose Bowl edition of the countdown comes back in 2 minutes.
Here is your countdown to kickoff trivia answer.
It's been 27 years to the day since Notre Dame last won one of the current New Year's Six bowl games. The Irish squeaked past Texas A&M in Dallas at the Cotton Bowl on January 1st, 1994. Number 2 Notre Dame finished that 93 season 11-1. falling just short of a national championship when Florida State took the top spot in the final polls.
Hard to believe it's been that long. One member of this Notre Dame team who sure doesn't want to fall short of a national championship is defensive coordinator Clark Lee, and he has a ton on his plate.
2 weeks ago, Lee was named the next head football coach at his alma mater, Vanderbilt. But Lee says right now his entire focus is not on what's next in Nashville, but prepping this Irish defense for Alabama, the country's top offense. Lee says he needs to put every ounce of his mental energy into this game plan since Notre Dame is going against a team like Alabama.
My singular focus has been on preparation for this game, and I know that may be hard to believe, but this is too big. Whatever is to come next for me will be there when this season's finished. But this is a culmination of 4 years of investment for me. So, and it's not just about me, obviously, it's 4 years of investment with these players. And so I'm excited about the future, but you know, this is the discipline just to stay focused on the task at hand, but emotionally, the investment, all the things that we've done over this time, it makes it easy.
Now, while players and fans had high expectations for the Irish defensive coordinator this year, they didn't really know what to expect from the offense.
Tommy Rees has passed most of the tests he has faced in his first year as Irish offensive coordinator, but today he has two experiences he has yet to encounter: rebounding from a loss and the stage of the college football playoff.
Welcome to the 2013 Discover BCS National Championship.
As a player, Tommy Rees's championship taste was bitter.
I'm going to, keep getting better and keep competing, and, we'll see what happens. But, I'm a Notre Dame guy.
But just 8 years later, Rees hopes to taste sweet redemption, facing Alabama again, this time as the Irish offensive coordinator. It might seem like a daunting challenge to anyone but Rees.
I'm confident in my abilities. I'm confident in the team. And again, we have a great staff that puts together a great plan every week. We have tremendous players that buy into the plan and go execute it.
That buy-in comes from a trust in Rees, particularly from Ian Book. Rees started as Book's quarterback coach back in 2017, and he has built a great relationship with the three-year starter, something he looks to do now with other areas of the offense.
You really prove yourself by your work ethic and the way you build relationships, and that's something that I've always tried to put first and foremost is just, how can I make sure that I'm doing everything I can to show that I'm here to work and that I'm here to, make this program better. And then, starting as a quarterback coach, building a relationship with those guys. And then as your role increases and you become the coordinator, increasing that relationship and that trust with the rest of the position groups.
Now the trust gets built with adapting. Notre Dame's offense left a lot of points on the field in the ACC championship against Clemson. Rees's frustration was clear. So now, what does he do about it?
Because if there's situational execution there on the first three drives, it could be 13-0 going into the second quarter or whatever it was. But those are all things that we're focused on. Those are all things that matter and make a huge impact in the flow of the game. And something that is situational execution has been emphasized, in practice, in the film room, and meetings.
For most 28-year-olds, this might be an experience you go into wide-eyed and overwhelmed. But Rees is the son of a coach, a quarterback who had 23 wins, and he's not making today's game too big for him or his team.
They're staying on schedule and giving us as many positive plays in a row as we can have. And I know that sounds simple or it sounds almost elementary, but I think when you play great teams, the more positive plays you can string in a row, the better you're going to be.
Mark, this was the first time all year we had a chance to talk with either of the coordinators, and it's clear they both see themselves as teachers.
Whether they have taught their lessons well enough to manufacture a major upset today, well, we'll know that in a few hours.
Up next on the Countdown, just how impressive is it to make the college football playoff in this weird year?
That's where we start the Irish Illustrated Report with Tim and Tim when the countdown to the Irish and the Tide in Dallas continues in 2 minutes.
We are back on the special college football playoff edition of the Countdown with a look at just what it took for the Irish to get here in this strangest of seasons.
We touch on that and the big game narrative Brian Kelly is sick of with Tim Priester and Tim O'Malley in the Irish Illustrated Report.
Given all the challenges this strange season has come with, Tim O'Malley, how impressive is it that Notre Dame is playing in the college football playoff?
Yeah, you consider the fact that if we did one of these in the preseason, we'd just be wondering, will Notre Dame get to 2 games played? And after they played 1 or 2 games, you were wondering if they were going to play again. They have really overcome a lot to get there, same as Alabama and Clemson. And I do agree. I don't want to anger any Buckeye fans out there. They overcame more than Ohio State did because you just didn't have to navigate as many pitfalls the way the seasons went. I think the Clemson loss put a damper on the regular season because it's not that it was unexpected. The way it happened was unexpected. So a lot of credit to Notre Dame for having a perfect regular season, and I'd like to see them bounce back here and go out on a high note. And playing very well. I don't think they played their best in that last game.
DP, a familiar narrative that appeared to go away 6 weeks ago is back, and that is not only can Notre Dame not win the big game, but they get blown out. Brian Kelly doesn't want to hear about it, but is it fair?
It's definitely fair, and I understand being in Brian Kelly's situation that he doesn't want to hear about it, but you have to compete at a higher level against these teams. 43-7 in his last 50 games is reminiscent of Lou Holtz. The difference, of course, is that Lou Holtz beat the big team. So Brian Kelly knows it. There might be a better way to respond to it. And you have a great opportunity coming up here. Beating Clemson during the season, #1 Clemson, was a great accomplishment, but you knew that everybody was going to say Trevor Lawrence didn't play and the guys on defense. And then secondly, the ACC championship, how are you going to do in that game? So they have another opportunity. If you can just see them in a competitive mode at halftime, that's a huge step forward against a program like Alabama.
Tommy Reese says that Ian Book doesn't have to be a hero to beat Alabama, but what does the Irish quarterback have to do to stem the Crimson Tide?
I would probably use the term heroic still. I think Ian Book has to play a heck of a game. He has the Clemson game, the first Clemson game would be the model for it, where he does stay in the pocket and deliver, but when he has to escape, he makes the plays. I don't think anyone with the level of Alabama's coaching and defense, especially after Clemson 2.0's blueprint of keeping Reese from running wild, is going to let that happen again. If they can beat Alabama, it won't happen in the championship game. I don't think it will happen against Alabama. He's going to have to make plays from the pocket. And I have been harping on something after that last loss. 0 for 2 throwing the ball downfield 20 yards, and he didn't attempt one until the fourth quarter. Chuck, I think it's better if he goes 2 for 10 than 0 for 2 because you have to loosen things up and take some shots. So he's got to be very efficient, but he also has to be a little bit more devil-may-care when he takes some shots downfield.
We flip it to the other side of the ball to see how Notre Dame's defense stacks up with Alabama's offense when Tim and Tim rejoin us around 1:50.
And you can subscribe to Irish Illustrated. It's the #1 source for Notre Dame sports online. Just head to irishillustrated.com. Click on Join to find the best plan for you. Up next, we just touched on how impressive it is to make the playoff this season, but what were some of the sacrifices the Irish had to make to get here?
They tell us what they've missed out on as they chase their dream of a national title when the countdown to kickoff in Dallas continues in 2 minutes. Back on the countdown with a look back at the last time Notre Dame played in the Rose Bowl when Newt Rockne took his 4-horseman-led squad west to Pasadena on New Year's Day 1925.
And the boys from South Bend were far from the only legends on that field. Notre Dame played a Stanford team coached by Pop Warner, with star Ernie Nevers, who played all 60 minutes just days after getting a cast taken off his ankle.
But despite those heroics, it was a great day for Notre Dame, and especially Elmer Layden. The Horsemen scored 3 touchdowns, including 2 on interceptions. Notre Dame won 27-10, capturing the first of the school's 11 national championships.
Of course, this year's Rose Bowl will be very different. First of all, it's in full living color on your screen. Oh, and it's played in Texas. Just the latest strange twist in this weird college football season.
A season where the Fighting Irish faced a coronavirus outbreak, dozens of players in quarantine, and a postponed game. Call it the luck of the Irish that Notre Dame has even made it to this game, but we know it's taken a lot to get here.
We bring in the Countdown's Lindsay Stone to give us an inside look at how the players have been coping during this challenging time for all of us, Lindsay.
Chuck, imagine trying to bond with your teammates through a plexiglass wall. That is just one of the many challenges this Fighting Irish team has worked through this season. And perhaps this season means even more than any season before because of the level of sacrifice it's taken to get here. In a year unlike any other, 4 teams made it through, but not without countless sacrifices.
I'm willing to give up anything for this team and for the success of this team.
Players haven't been allowed to go home in months, restricted to a campus that's been overwhelmingly quiet.
At our dinner and our team meals, we got a glass in between us that, we can't even really hear ourselves talk to each other.
And it's the people they've missed the most.
Everybody in the world's had, they've been missing stuff, but for me, it's just, spending time with my family.
At least 9 months and not be able to go home, because I'm a big homebody, so not be able to go home it's really affected me, but it's a sacrifice we have to give up to be where we want to be.
And while routines look a little different this year,
a lot going on, after the game, I pretty much go home, lay on my couch, watch the game about 2 or 3 times, and then probably go pick up some food.
Liam and his teammates know it's worth it.
We've sacrificed so much, and for me as a 5th year in my final season, a lot on the line for me personally. I can't risk getting sick.
This pandemic has helped us a lot. It helped us become closer in a way, not being able to see each other every day and still knowing that your brother is out there wherever he's at in the world putting in work so that we can come back this season and be where we want to be, and that's in the national championships.
And the player sacrifices didn't cease because of the holidays. They were only given Christmas Day off, and they were not allowed to travel home to see their families. Now, the team did do a big gift exchange to celebrate, but the gift they all want, the reason for all of these sacrifices, is a win in today's Rose Bowl.
I know you sacrificed standing out in the ice storm today, too, so thank you for your sacrifice as well. Up next, it is the tale of the tape of the 2 quarterbacks in today's Rose Bowl.
You'll hear from Ian Book and the Tide's Heisman hopeful Mac Jones when quick hits come your way on the countdown in 2 minutes.
Live from the WNDU studios, this is a special college football playoff edition of 16 News Now's Countdown to Kickoff.
Coach Nick Saban and his top-ranked and undefeated Crimson Tide have arrived in Dallas for their latest trip to the college football playoff. High-powered and heavily favored Alabama hopes to make quick work today of the Fighting Irish.
But Brian and the boys, of course, have come to Texas with a much different agenda. Kelly's crew plans to stun the college football world and keep their dreams of a 12th national championship alive. Back inside the countdown on this New Year's Day, WHME Sports Director Chuck Freeby, I'm Mark Skol Jr.
Let's get back up to speed with some quick hits on the countdown. Lindsay and Megan rejoin us for the relay in a few minutes, but Mark gets us out of the blocks.
Chuck, Ian Book set the all-time wins record at Notre Dame, which he thinks is cool and all, but he wants to be remembered as a national championship winning quarterback. Of course, the last time Notre Dame was this close to winning its first national title since 1988 was the 2018 Cotton Bowl game against Clemson. In the playoff game, Book completed only 50% of his passes. He threw an interception, and the Irish failed to find the end zone. Book wants redemption his second trip to the college football playoff, and with a win today, Book could rewrite his playoff legacy.
Had a bad taste in our mouth since that 18 game for a lot of the guys that played in it. So just to be able to end my college career at the biggest stage, the Rose Bowl has been a game I've been watching since I was a little kid, and just to be in the playoffs, we want to finish it the right way. We truly have an opportunity, and it starts with believing. We believe we can win. We believe that we can win a national championship this year.
Book has been compared to a national championship winning quarterback at Notre Dame. Clemson head coach Dabo Swinney thinks Book has some Joe Montana magic to him. Megan, let's go from the Irish QB1 who's shown some magic to the Crimson Tide signal caller who just continues to show off.
Mark, Alabama's Mac Jones has a cannon of an arm, and he's been taking shots all season long. This season, Jones has thrown for more than 3,700 yards and 32 touchdowns. He's got an insane completion rate of nearly 77%. This kid just doesn't miss. After spending 2 years on the sidelines as backup to Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa, Jones is ready for his time in the spotlight.
It's definitely a blessing. Any college football player would want to say they wanted to play in the game like the Rose Bowl and a college football playoff. So we're just really happy to be here, but at the same time, you got to kind of ask yourself if you're satisfied with just being there, or do you want to really take advantage of the opportunity? And I think all of our teammates and our coaches decided that we just want to take advantage of where we're at, and we're finally where we want to be. And like I said, it's a great blessing, and we're just looking forward to the opportunity.
And Jones is a finalist for the Heisman Trophy, and he's got some company with one of his teammates. So, Chuck, a big reason for Jones' success is the powerful weapons he's got at his disposal.
Megan, forget Batman and Robin. Alabama's dynamic duo can create plenty of bam and pow moments on their own. Receiver Devonta Smith is amazing. He has 98 catches for 1,511 yards and 17 touchdowns. He is the first wide receiver to be named Player of the Year by the Associated Press, and he is one of 4 finalists for the Heisman Trophy. Clark Lee said earlier this week, Smith's speed means Alabama can score on any play, which is why he's nicknamed the Slim Reaper. He gets help from running back Naji Harris, a former 7-on-7 teammate of Ian Book. Harris has run for 1,262 yards and 24 touchdowns. At 6'2", 235 pounds, it's like trying to tackle a truck. But the most impressive part about Harris is how he overcame a childhood filled with homelessness and abuse to become one of college football's biggest stars.
From what you're saying of homeless, I overcame a lot at a young age, but I guess I wouldn't take any of it back because I learned from a lot of it, from financially and being grateful from the little things that I have. So I'm grateful, I guess.
The combo of Smith and Harris have combined for 45 touchdowns this year. There are only 17 college football teams this season that scored more than 45 touchdowns. It's fair to say Smith and Harris are both elite players. Notre Dame has a freshman who may have that said about him someday, Lindsay.
Chuck, there was certainly a lot of talk about freshman tight end Michael Mayer before he arrived on campus, and there is even more buzz now. This kid has been a standout for the Fighting Irish offense this season, breaking records and becoming one of Ian Book's favorite targets. Mayer made headlines after breaking Kyle Rudolph's 2008 Irish freshman record for receptions and receiving yards for a tight end. Mayer came to South Bend as a 5-star recruit and the #1 prospect in Notre Dame's 2020 signing class. And while you might think that gives Mayer a reason to take his foot off the gas pedal, he's staying focused on putting in the work and playing good football.
I don't think there was just a certain time in my career here that I was kind of just like, okay, well, this is real. I think it was more of a come here and just work and put my head down, and whatever happens, happens. In terms of my success, it's just the mindset coming in. You know, when third down comes, all right, this is my time. Is the ball going to come to me? Run the right route? How many steps am I going to take? That type of thing. But overall, it's a team effort, and everyone, including Ian and the O-line, and everybody else, has done a very good job.
And Mayer has earned himself a nickname among Irish fans, Baby Gronk, because it reminds him of future Hall of Famer tight end Rob Gronkowski. Reminds him of a Gronk on the field, that is. Chuck and Mark.
And he wears 87 just like him, too. Thank you so much, Lindsay. Up next on the countdown, is Notre Dame closer to elite status than they were the last time they played in the college football playoff? Chuck and I buy or sell on that question and a slew of other topics.
And here's another countdown trivia test. Who scored the winning points when Notre Dame beat #1 Alabama in the 1973 Sugar Bowl? The answer when this college football playoff edition of the countdown comes back in 2 minutes.
Here is your countdown to kickoff trivia answer.
Irish kicker Bob Thomas scored what ended up as the winning points in the 1973 Sugar Bowl. Thomas hit a chip shot 19-yard field goal to give Notre Dame a 24-23 lead over Alabama in the fourth quarter. Era's Irish held on to that slim lead against Bears Crimson Tide, taking down the #1 team in the country and winning Notre Dame's 9th national championship. Before DraftKings, I want a milkshake on that game. We're back with a favorite on the countdown. It's buy or sell time this afternoon. Mark, first question. Notre Dame is closer to being an elite team than they were on their last trip to the college football playoff.
I'm going to buy this one. The culture has been set after that 2016 season, and we've now seen 4 consecutive 10-win seasons for the Irish. I'm going to buy that one for sure. I think Notre Dame's definitely better.
I'm buying not as much for the culture, although I think it's improved since 2016 certainly, but I also think the depth on this roster, you've seen it on the offensive and defensive lines this year, you've seen it in the linebacking core. They have more talent top to bottom on their roster, which is what it takes to be elite.
Now the ACC will have at least one team in the national championship game, buy or sell.
Well, that means you're taking either Notre Dame or Clemson in this one to have at least one. And we'll fill you in on how we feel about the Irish at the end of the show, although it may come through in this segment. I buy that. I think Clemson will move on.
I'm buying big time on this one. I think Clemson will kind of destroy Ohio State later today. But there could be two. Who knows?
You wore your Clemson orange today. Notre Dame gets 200 rushing yards today. Buy or sell?
I'm going to buy this one. Notre Dame has rushed for 200 yards in at least 7 of their 11 games. I think Ian Book gets going today with the rushing yards, so I think that's the key for Notre Dame hitting that 200-yard milestone.
There comes a point in a game where you get behind by so much that it suddenly becomes El Paso instead of running the football. I'm afraid Notre Dame may hit that point today. I'm going to sell on this one.
Alabama gets 400 passing yards today. Buy or sell?
There comes a point in the game where you're ahead by so much that you no longer have to throw the football, and I think Alabama may reach that point today. I also think Nick Saban might take his foot off the gas, try to rest some people for that national championship game if they're in that situation. I'm selling on that as well.
Not a lot of Alabama games have been close this year, but their 4 closest games, Mac Jones has thrown for over 400 yards in each of them. I think this game is going to be closer than people expect, so I'm going to buy it. Mac Jones is going to hit 400 yards.
All right, Nick Saban will retire as the greatest college football coach ever. Buy or sell?
Totally buying it. We talked earlier about the culture Notre Dame has established. The culture at Alabama is unreal. Saban's got 5-star recruits sitting on the bench for 2 years just waiting for their opportunity to play. Talk about a culture there, and he's won a lot too.
Irish fans, I know about Rockne, Leahy, Parsegan, and Holtz. None of them have won 6 titles. Nick Saban has, and he may be on his way to the 7th. I'll buy that one as well.
Up next, we shift our focus to one of the stars of the Irish defense, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah.
The man already has a mantle full of awards from this season. What he's done to get himself to that point from beginning on the scout team. When the countdown to the Irish and the Tide in Dallas continues in just 2 minutes. Back on the countdown, where no one has provided more of an impact for the Irish defense than Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. The senior linebacker seems to explode every time Notre Dame needs him to.
The Countdown's Megan Smedley joins us again from Studio B with more on Woo's catapult to be one of the best defenders in the country.
To say J-OK is just okay might be the biggest understatement of the year. Woo has skyrocketed in every facet of the game for the Irish this season and isn't losing sight of the ultimate goal.
Glory that's been given, all praises to the Most High.
Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah went from the scout team 3 years ago to playing in 2 games in 2018 to starting every game the past 2 years and being the team's leading tackler.
I would say that process was needed. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful process, that ultimately allows me to be a type of leader that I want to be, because how can I guide you down a path that I haven't seen before?
Even now, he's still constantly working on his craft.
I think there's a willingness to be coached and developed. There's like a humility involved in that, where it takes a certain personality to step back and say, hey, this is something I really want. I'm not where I need to be. Coach, how do I get to where I want to be?
JOK doesn't just tackle, he packs a punch, nearly knocking opponents back into 2019.
You don't want to celebrate right away. You want to make sure your body's fine in itself. But, the energy automatically flows. When things like that happen, you hear the audience, you see your teammates running over, you want to celebrate with them.
His play fires up his teammates, too.
When you're around him, you kind of just want to jump in, and you're just energized just by his presence, because the way he flies around to the ball, the way he takes leadership on the field.
I mean, he's an electric player. He's a guy that can change the game. It's been a blessing to play next to him.
Everyone seems to be taking notice. In the last week alone, JOK was named a first-team All-American, the ACC Defensive Player of the Year, ACC First Team, a finalist for the Bednarik Award, and the winner of the prestigious Butkus Award as the nation's top linebacker.
All throughout high school, I thought I was a safety. I thought I was a corner. I thought I was everything but a linebacker. But
he becomes the 3rd Golden Domer to get the honor, following Manti Te'o and Jalen Smith.
It's all appreciative and I'm all thankful. But even to that extent, my due diligence is to what's in front of me. My due diligence is to handle what is at stake. And right now, what is at stake is a national championship, is a playoff game.
These are the stories that as a coach, they fuel you. And I'm excited for Woo. I'm excited for what his future holds.
Yes, even with all of the awards, Lee still thinks the best is yet to come.
As he's really flourished, on this campus that is absolutely transferred to his on-field performance. And I still think, we're continuing to push for that highest level for him. That's what's exciting.
All signs point toward an NFL future, but Owusu-Koramoah's sole focus is staying calm heading into today's game.
To focus on yourself and your development. And ultimately, that process will drive you to meet that opportunity and to ultimately succeed.
Wu says that one of the most important things Coach Clark Lee has taught him was to leave a place better than you found it. And it's safe to say that Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah has done just that. Up next, Chuck and Mark return with Tim and Tim for a look at how JOK's defense stacks up against Alabama's offense. It's the Irish Illustrated Report in 2 minutes on the countdown.
Here are the final results of this week's Lock Monday Auto Group Irish fan poll on WNDU.com.
We asked you what will be the Rose Bowl result. 26% of you say Notre Dame will win, while 53% think Alabama wins by 20 or more, and 21% say Bama wins by less than 20. Thank you for voting in the Lock Money Auto Group Irish fan poll on WNDU.com.
The biggest reason Alabama is such a heavy favorite is their high-powered offense. They score points in droves.
But the Irish have prided themselves on their defense this season, so how do they stack up? That's where we pick up the Irish Illustrated Report with Tim and Tim.
Priester, nobody has held Bama's offense below 38 points this year, but Notre Dame's defense hasn't given up that much in regulation this year either. So which of these units has the better day today?
Well, on paper, if this game were played on paper, it looks pretty good for Notre Dame because they're facing a powerful Alabama offense, but they have a great defense, or a defense that's capable of being great. But I think Notre Dame's offense has the best chance for consistent, or at least semi-consistent success in this game. You have to run the football against them, there's no doubt. Ian Book has to be part of the running equation. I think that's possible. I think that can be done. And then the only way you can really loosen up your passing game is if you run the football. And I think that they can do that. They do have to find ways, though, for Ian Book to be successful on the ground, because if you go back and track it, when he runs, the offense is really good. But boy, I tell you, stopping that Alabama offense, 49.7 points per game, with the weapons that they have, it's very, very difficult to stop that, even with a great defense.
And yet, T.O., we grew up with this axiom, the defense wins championships. However, you look at 3 of the 4 playoff teams are in the top 7 of scoring offenses nationally. How much has the game changed since, say, the last time that these 2 teams played?
I think defense just gives you the chance now to win a championship. It's the best offenses win. Now, think about this. Joe Burrow threw 60 touchdown passes last year on the way to the national championship. That sounds made up. It sounds like I just grabbed the number. That's the actual number. Alabama, you say 38 points is the lowest they scored. That was in the opener. They're not dipping below 40. It takes a Herculean task to hold a team like Alabama to 35 points in a semifinal game. And that's just not 7 years ago. I mean, we would have been wrong, but you probably would have predicted, if you're looking for Notre Dame to beat Alabama 24-21 or something along those lines, that's out the window now. You cannot reasonably go into one of these games and think you're going to score 24 points and beat one of the 4 best teams in the country. And it's probably the 3 best teams in the country. That's what it seems to end up being, the 2 or 3 that are separating. And we got to see if Notre Dame can join that group, because Alabama and Clemson and occasionally Ohio State, their offenses are just clicking and they seem unstoppable when they get going.
Tim O'Malley will score predictions. What do you think is going to happen in the Rose Bowl?
Yeah, I think Notre Dame is going to play one of its best games of the season, but I still think Alabama will cover. I just think they get away from Notre Dame at some point. I was thinking in the 48-31 range. That wouldn't be a cover, so the 48-27. For Notre Dame to have a path to victory, I was talking to Tim Priester about this. You've never really watched a football game where a defensive line played great and got killed. Doesn't mean you're going to win the game, but I think the one path to victory is if Notre Dame's defensive line can play its absolute best game, they can keep it close. And if they do, I would still put that score in the 38-31 range. So I have Alabama 48. I'm going to give Notre Dame a cover. Alabama 48, Notre Dame 31.
All right, TP, what about you?
I really think that Notre Dame's offensive line can have success against Alabama's defensive front. It's the guys coming off the edge, the speed at linebacker, the outstanding play that they get from the cornerback position. I think Notre Dame has some success offensively, but ultimately, Notre Dame's not going to be the only defense in the country that could not slow down this Alabama offense. I have Alabama 44, Notre Dame 21.
And you can subscribe to Irish Illustrated. It's the #1 source for Notre Dame sports online. Just head to irishillustrated.com and click on Join to find the best plan for you.
Up next, it's our Irish Keys to the Game. X Factors and score predictions. The Four Winds Casino. What to watch for in 2 minutes on the countdown. Back on the countdown, Megan rejoins us for our Four Winds Casino What to Watch For, and we start with our Irish Keys to the Game. Mark?
I think the key is simple today. Notre Dame has to dominate the time of possession today. We've talked about defenses win championships, and I think today the best defense is keeping Alabama's offense off of the field. You got to dominate the time of possession. Megan?
Well, Mark, and how do you keep the Alabama offense off the field? You get the Notre Dame run game going. They need to get Kyron Williams going. They need to get Ian Book going to give Notre Dame's defense a break, because they will be running up and down that field going after Alabama. Chuck?
I agree with both of you. Notre Dame has to average at least 5 yards per carry in this game. That'll also open up the play-action passing game and allow them for some strikes downfield. Now our X factors, Mark.
Easiest X factor for me all season. Earlier this week, running back Kyron Williams says Alabama literally needs to kill them in order to beat them. I'm rolling with the confidence. He's also pretty good as a running back too. Megan?
I'm going to go with quarterback Ian Book. Surprisingly, none of us have picked him all season long as an X factor. He's the winningest quarterback in Notre Dame history. It could very well be his last game as a member of the Fighting Irish, so look for him to have a big game to kind of cement his legacy. Chuck?
We haven't picked him because quarterbacks can't be X factors, but I'll tell you who can be, and that's Javon McKinley. The big receiver needs to have a big game working against that star cornerback Patrick Surtain. Won't be easy, but if he does, the Irish can win. Score time, Mark.
I think Notre Dame is going to make this closer than people think, but they do fall today, 42-31. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if they are playing in 2 Mondays. Megan?
I don't think it's going to be that close. I've got Alabama winning 45-21, and that might be a little generous. Chuck?
Folks, if a storm's coming, a weatherman has to tell you about it. A storm's coming today. The Crimson Tide will flood the Fighting Irish today by a count of 42-24. The Irish and the Crimson Tide just a few hours away from their college football playoff semifinal tilt. You can see the game on ESPN. Then Mark and Megan are back at 11 tonight with highlights and reaction right here on 16 News Now.